In this video, we're going to go over some of the features of your new AirBoss 575 or 750. We'll talk about some of the differences between what you get when you get a skid unit versus when you get a trailer unit, and what some of the optional features are between the various models. We'll also go over what we can call a quick start guide, which is essentially how to get going the first time and learn to do it more reliably in the future. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so this model is the Elite with Trailer Package C. It's essentially the fully loaded unit. So let me just pause the walk around here for a second. And we're going to talk about some of the differences, right? So because this is fully loaded, it has a few options that some of the other ones don't. So if we look here, we've got a powered hose reel. This is a pneumatic powered hose reel. So this is the difference that you get whether you buy the trailer or the skid unit. This is one of the upgrades you get going from a Pro Series to an Elite Series. And we'll just continue the walk around here, and I'll pause it here, and this will allow me to highlight the lockable brush box as well as the integrated spray wand storage and the ramp with spring assist. So all of these features come on the package B for your trailer. All right, and we'll just continue our way on to the front of the trailer where we can highlight the last difference between any of the Pros versus any of the Elites. All right, so the last difference between the Pros and the Elites is the size of the compressor pump. So if we look here, you can see that this is a Y-shaped compressor pump. This is the 2105, and this is what comes standard on the Elite models. And the 1105, which is a single stage, so it has 2 pistons versus 4. And the main difference between the 1105 and the 2105 is the CFM. The larger one on the Elite makes 27 CFM, and the smaller one on the Pro makes 17 CFM. All right, so we'll wrap up the last of the tour here by freezing frame, and I can show you the lockable brush box. So that is the last feature that you get when you get Package B and Package C for your AirBoss. And while you can't really see it in this photo, when you get Package C, you are upgrading from 30 to 60 gallons of water storage. And if you guys are excited about features the same way that I am, here is a quick snapshot of the differences between the 4 skid units. And then here is the same thing showing the 3 different trailer packages. So that's it for the overview. Next, we're going to go over the quick start, and essentially this is going to walk you through all of the things that you need to do to get started, especially for the first time. We're going to walk through how all the valves are configured, how the agitation works, how to start the engine, things of that nature. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So I'm going to start talking about the different sides of the AirBoss, and I'm making sides with air quotes. What I mean by this is the input side of things, which if you look here, it's everything connected to the bottom of the diaphragm pump. And then the output side, which is everything that's connected to the top. So there are 2 valves to pick from on the input side. There are 3 valves to pick from on the output side. And let's go over each of these in detail now. And one last thing before we get started is I just want to talk about valves. So if you're not familiar with these 90-degree ball valves, essentially when they are parallel with the plumbing, they are open like this one, and when they are perpendicular to the plumbing, they are closed. So just as a reminder when we talk about the various valve configurations coming up shortly. Okay, so everything we're going to talk about here is located in the Quick Start Guide, which is included in your manual. All right, first we're going to start about the primary input and the secondary input valve. And all that means is the one closest to the tank is your primary, and the one further away is your secondary. So anytime you're traveling, we recommend that you close both valves, and this will just minimize the chance of any fluid spilling should some kind of accident occur. Next, we're going to talk about loading from a secondary input source. And in this situation, the primary input valve is closed and the secondary input valve is open. And in this situation, what you would do is you would connect a hose to the end cap here, and you would be sucking from a third-party container like a barrel or a tote or another tank of any sort. And essentially this would be how you would load or spray from not your primary tank. Now we're going to talk about using the primary tank or the primary input in order to do your spraying. So this is probably the configuration you're going to use most of the time, and in this instance the primary input valve is open and the secondary input valve is closed. So essentially you're pulling from the tank, either on the skid or on the trailer, directly and to whatever output that you pick from. And the last section here is kind of a secret setting, I don't know, a life hack if you're into that. Essentially this is a transition to go into the outputs, because if you open both the primary and the secondary input, what this will do is it'll allow you to gravity empty the contents of your tank. So at the end of the season or at the end of the day, if you don't feel like pushing the fluid using the pump and you just want to drain it through gravity, open up both of those valves as well as removing the cap from the end, and it will allow you to drain manually into a third-party container. All right, so now we're going to switch over to the output side of things. And here we have 3 valves, and this one is for the spray wand, this one is for recirculation, and the last one is for just a secondary output. You could use this to push fluid into another AirBoss. You could use this to connect to a spray bar. Essentially, it's just a third option for having powered output. So we'll go through all the various configurations. It's really important to remember here that you only ever want to have one of your outputs open at a time. If you have more than one output open at a time, you will have decreased performance, and you may mistake this for the fact that your unit could be having a problem. The first output mode we're going to talk about is spray mode. This is probably the operation you're going to use the most, and essentially all you need to do is leave the recirculation valve and the secondary output valves closed, and just make sure that you rotate the spray valve to the open position, and that's it. Now you're ready to spray. There is another valve on the spray wand itself that you can use to actually control when you do and do not want to spray. That is it for spray mode. Next, we're going to talk about recirculation. Outside of spraying, this is probably the mode you're going to be in the most. What you want to use this for is mixing your sealer. So either if you want to add more water or if you want to add aggregate, you would use this in conjunction with your agitation to make sure that you have a good uniform mix. And so the way we do this is we make sure that the spray output and the secondary output are closed and the recirculation valve is open. And essentially what this does is it sprays back into the top of the tank, and this is a great way to make sure that your sealer is uniform and doesn't settle and separate. All right, and the last output is what we're calling the secondary output, but essentially you can connect a hose to this and use this to fill third-party containers. You could even fill another AirBoss if you needed to, but essentially you could use this to use the power of the AirBoss to fill a container with the contents of your tank. Alternatively, you could hook up third-party accessories. A spray bar comes to mind, so the AirBoss trailers come with a rear hitch receiver, which means that you could put in a spray bar and power it using the AirBoss. In order to do that, the spray valve needs to be closed and the recirculate valve needs to be closed, and we need to open the secondary output valve. All right, so we've gone through the various operational modes. Now I'm going to go over some of the things to look at that you'll have to address, more or less every day that you're on the job. So starting at the back of the unit, you've got a muffler here that has a drain valve. This will need to be emptied every day. Here you've got the filter regulator lubricator, and on the left side here is the water separator, so that will need to be emptied every day. In the middle you've got your regulator, and on the right is the lubricator. So you need to make sure that there is oil in there in order to gain the benefits. All right, next we're going to talk about the expansion tank or surge arrestor. So this is the industry's only pressure adjustable surge arrestor. So inside of this bottle is a rubberized bladder. We set the pressure to 50 psi. If you unscrew this plastic cap, inside here is a standard Schrader valve, and you can increase or decrease the pressure as needed. And essentially this allows you to fine-tune the PSI so that you can minimize any pulsing coming through your spray wand while you're spraying. So this is something that you should probably check almost daily to make sure that you're at the appropriate air pressure. Next, we've got the water pump. The water pump here is only available on our trailers. It is a pneumatic double diaphragm pump, and it is controlled by the levers up here near the expansion tank. And there's 50 feet of water hose, and it is connected to the lockable brush box if you have trailer package B or C. Next, if you have the Elite only, there's the pneumatic hose reel. The Pro comes with a manual one, and it has its own regulator and its own valve, and you control it with the ball valve. Here there's a valve connected to the filter pot. So this filter pot needs to be cleaned every day. And when you're flushing it with water, if you want to get all the water out, you can open up that valve, remove this cap, and that will allow all of the water to flow out. And further with that lockable brush box, there is a valve to help drain that. So you should put water in that, and that will help to keep your tools from drying out. And when you rinse it out at the end of the day, you can use this valve to drain the fluid out of the lockbox. All right, and the last thing I want to talk about on the back of the unit here is the on-off valve for the diaphragm, the main diaphragm pump itself. So essentially this is what you need to sort of activate the whole system. So if we look up here near the FRL and just zoom in a little bit, and you can see the main valve, and you'll see a thick gray air line that goes from this valve directly to the air intake on the diaphragm pump. So essentially that's the on-off switch for the whole AirBoss, essentially, outside of the engine. All right, so now we're going to take a look at the agitation system. So if we work our way here up to the front of the unit, and there is a approximately 5-gallon reservoir for the hydraulic fluid, a filter, and this gauge that is a pressure gauge. And as that starts to work its way into the yellow and the red, you'll need to change the filter. And how to operate is literally click the lever forward for clockwise, leave it in the middle for off, and click it back for counterclockwise. All right, and while we're looking at the deck here, here's a few more class-leading features. So we have the largest ramp in the industry. It is 72 by 38 inches, and this will make it easier for you to load and unload large equipment off of the deck. The deck itself is 80 by 67 inches. Again, this is the largest deck in the industry, and it also comes with 9 built-in tie-downs, as well as you can fasten to the railing. So there is an amazing capability to load a lot of equipment on the deck of this trailer. Now let's talk about the engine. All of these units come with a 14 horsepower Kohler with a keyed ignition. So all you need to do is make sure there's gas and make sure there's oil, because if you're low on oil, it's possible that your engine may not start because it has a low oil sensor. Okay, so here we are at the front of the unit. We're just going to talk about how to start it. So if we look here, there are 2 sliders on the left-hand side. One is for choke and the other is for fuel. And you will notice that the fuel is in the off position. We recommend that whenever you travel with your unit, you move the fuel to the on position. So let us slide that to the on, and we're going to take the choke and we're going to slide that to on as well. If your engine is already warmed up, you may not need to have full choke. You may be able to get away with half choke or no choke, depending on how warm your engine is. So for this, it's a cold start, so we're going to put the choke to on. We have already checked to make sure that it's full of fuel. Trust us on that. If this is the first time that you have put fuel in the tank and the first time that you have opened your fuel valve, it may take 5 to 10 minutes before enough fuel flows from the gas can into the carburetors. So just the first time you put fuel in it, just let it sit for a couple of minutes before you try to start it. So over here we have our electric start. This works just like any ignition. So we have off at the top, and we have run at the I position, and we have start all the way to the right. So essentially, just like a car, you're going to turn it all the way to the right until it starts and let go, and it will slide back to the run position. And when you're ready to turn the engine off, you can just slide that key back to the off position. You will notice that there is a throttle here, and we did not mention adjusting it at all. The throttle is controlled by the kickdown mechanism. So this kickdown mechanism is pre-programmed from the factory to kick up and kick down at various pressures in order to save you fuel. And that mechanism comes up here, and it is connected to the throttle via that air hose. On the other side of the trailer, we had a lockable brush box, and on this side we have a lockable storage. You can put anything you want in there. Tools, hoses, equipment, anything. They will all be keyed the same, so all of these 4 locks will have the same key. Next we're going to talk about the water fill port and the on-trailer storage. So the fill port is located on the deck near the unit, and we just open that up and you'll have access to either 30 or 60 gallons of water, and we'll just transition here underneath and I'll show you what those look like. This unit has two 30-gallon tanks, and if you have trailer package B or A, you will have one 30-gallon tank. Okay, so now we're going to talk about easy access. So you'll notice that there's grip tape on the side of the unit as well as on the toolboxes, and here we have a grab rail right there and another one right here to makes it easy to climb up onto the unit. And the grip tape, the steps, and the grab rails are all repeated on the other side of the trailer.